In an interview given by a bishop to EWTN, some words emerge that are causing controversy. Pope Benedict XVI had seen the crisis of the Church coming and had said so well in advance. Stay until the end to understand what was said and why it weighs so heavily now. It is not an outside observer or a late commentator who speaks. He is Monsignor Georg Genswein, Archbishop, now Apostolic Nuncio to the Baltic countries, but above all, personal secretary to Joseph Ratzinger for almost 20 years, first as Cardinal, then as Pontiff, and finally as Pope Emeritus. A figure who shared the daily life, the work, the silence, and the concerns of Benedict XVI from the inside, without media filters. Throughout the interview, Genswein never uses the language of private revelation. He doesn't speak of visions or secret messages, yet the picture that emerges is unequivocal. Benedict XVI had formulated a profound and coherent diagnosis of the direction the Church was taking, and he had foreseen its consequences. Ratzinger's analyses reportedly did not originate during his pontificate, nor were they a belated reaction to advanced secularization. They date back to the 1960s and 1970s, in the period immediately following the Second Vatican Council, when much of the Catholic world spoke of a new spring and a great openness. Just then, while enthusiasm dominated ecclesial discourse, Ratzinger began to warn of a silent but radical transformation of Christianity. The central point, reiterated in the interview, is that Benedict XVI did not fear the modern world in itself, nor did he reject dialogue. His alarm was rather about the loss of the essential, that is, the progressive reduction of faith to a secondary, optional, decorative factor. When Christianity ceases to be foundation and becomes accessory, Ratzinger explained, everything else becomes empty. Genswein recalls how Benedict XVI insisted on a clear distinction. The Church can and must carry out works of charity, engage in social work, intervene in history, but only as a consequence of faith, not as a replacement for it. When action precedes worship, when organization takes the place of doctrine, when consensus becomes more important than truth, then the Church ceases to be itself. In this sense, the Archbishop recalls a particularly harsh statement by Ratzinger: a Church that celebrates the cult of action is superfluous and destined to disappear, not because it is persecuted, but because it is hollowed out from within. A Church that speaks the language of the world, that adopts its political and sociological categories, is not perceived as an alternative, but as a useless duplicate. The heart of Ratzinger's prophecy, as emerges from the interview, concerns precisely this: the Church that anticipates the world instead of converting it, that strives to prove itself relevant according to parameters foreign to the gospel, progressively losing its own supernatural identity. Genswein emphasizes that Benedict XVI was fully aware of the price of this position. Being clear-headed in times of excitement leads to isolation. Going against the grain, especially in your own country, invites hostility. And in fact, the Archbishop recalls the media were never kind to Ratzinger precisely because he did not seek applause, but considered it his duty to say what he recognized as true. Today, the issue is no longer theoretical. During the interview, an implicit but clear comparison is drawn between the situation of the Church in Western Europe and that of other contexts, such as the Baltic countries. Where Christianity has been persecuted, where faith has never been taken for granted, it still appears as a living, clear, recognizable reality. In the West, however, faith is often perceived as one option among others, if not a relic of the past. And it is precisely here that Benedict XVI's words take on a disturbing tone. What he predicted has become reality. Empty churches, declining vocations, doctrinal confusion, a loss of moral credibility, not for lack of facilities or funds, but for a progressive dematerialization of the content of faith. Genswein does not accuse individual culprits, but his speech reveals one clear fact. Many did not want to listen when it was still possible to correct the course. The analyses were dismissed as pessimistic, the warnings dismissed as conservative, the calls for clarity interpreted as rigidity. Only today, when the processes are advanced and often irreversible, are those words being reread with different eyes. A particularly significant passage concerns the concept of de-worldliness uttered by Benedict XVI during his trip to Germany. Genswein clarifies that the term was deliberately distorted. It was not an economic battle, nor a crusade against legal or fiscal instruments, but an invitation to take a spiritual inventory, to distinguish what truly serves the Church's mission from what, over time, has become a burden. Once again, the alarm was not against the world, but against the confusion between means and ends. When structures become more important than the faith they are supposed to serve, the risk is not only inefficiency, but the loss of the soul. In Genswein's account, Benedict XVI appears as a coherent figure until the end. The same man before and after the pontificate, the same theologian, the same believer, the same pastor. No transformation of roles, no public mask, just growing responsibility and an ever-increasing burden on one's shoulders. And it is precisely this consistency that makes his words difficult to dismiss today. This isn't a pontiff who has changed his mind, nor is he nostalgic for the past. This is a man who has maintained a consistent line of thought for decades and who has seen his analyses confirmed one after the other. The interview doesn't end on a triumphal note. There's no complacency in saying he was right. On the contrary, a note of bitterness emerges. Being right too soon often means being ignored, and when reality confirms the analysis, the price has already been paid. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.